Welcome back to the Olga S. Pérez Show. I'm your host, Olga. How you doing? Welcome to Philadelphia. What's up, everyone? I'm still getting I'm tweaking a couple of things. Give me a second. I don't know if you guys, I don't know. How do you guys do the debate? I've never done the debate. Not only have I never done a live stream of any debates, I don't believe I've ever watched one. I've always just waited for the highlights or when people commented on them and stuff like that. But this one's in Philly, baby. This one's in Philly, Philadelphia. So hope some of my paisanos find me on here today. As I mentioned to you before, for those who've been watching me, been following me, if you haven't already subscribed to my channel. This is where it gets real and raw all the time, live. And of course, join me on Locals. That's where it's completely uncensored, unfiltered, behind the scenes. It doesn't get more real than that as far as on these kinds of platforms. Who's with me already? Wow, it's so great to see so many people here. Make sure to say hi. Don't be shy, even if it's an emoji. You know, your comments are my fuel. I do read them and I will respond. I'm going to try not to interrupt because I obviously want to listen to what they have to say. And I have a couple questions for you guys also. I want to know what visual do you prefer? I'm going to screen share in a second and see, I don't know if you want this one where I'm smaller, or do you prefer something more like this? Or I made something a little different this time. What about something like this? You guys let me know. And then I'm thinking if they go on a commercial and a break, I'll kind of just put it down in the corner so we're aware when they get back. What do you think, ladies and gentlemen? Oh, look at that. Smash that like button. I did that by accident. That just did it on its own just because it saw me go like this. But I'm I wasn't even doing this, right? I was just because that's how you just sit and pose, right? You just go. So yeah, let's see. Did it start? Let me put the volume out. Oh shit, it did already start. I didn't think they were going to start on time.
From China and other places, they've left the tariffs on. When I had tariffs, and yet I had no inflation. Look, we've had a terrible economy because inflation which is really known as a country buster. It breaks up countries. We have inflation like very few people have ever seen before, probably the worst in our nation's history. We were at 21%, but that's being generous because many things are 50, 60, 70, and 80% higher than they were just a few years ago. This has been a disaster for people, for the middle class, but for every class. On top of that, we have millions of people pouring into our country from prisons and jails, from mental institutions and insane asylums, and they're coming in and they're taking jobs that are occupied right now by African Americans and Hispanics, and also unions. Unions are going to be affected very soon. And you see what's happening. You see what's happening with towns throughout the United States. You look at Springfield, Ohio. You look at Aurora in Colorado. They are taking over the towns. They're taking over buildings. They're going in violently. These are the people that Xi and Biden led into our country, and they're destroying our country. They're dangerous. They're at the highest level of criminality, and we have to get them out. We have to get them out fast. I created one of the greatest economies in the history of our country. I'll do it again and even better.
We are going to get to immigration and border security during this debate, but I would like to let Vice President Harris respond on the economy here.
Well, I would love to. Let's talk about what Donald Trump left us. Donald Trump left us the worst unemployment since the Great Depression. Donald Trump left us the worst public health epidemic in a century. Donald Trump left us the worst attack on our democracy since the Civil War. And what we have done is clean up Donald Trump's mess. What we have done and what I intend to do is build on what we know are the aspirations and the hopes of the American people. But I'm going to tell you all in this debate tonight, you're going to hear from the same old tired playbook, a bunch of lies, grievances, and name calling.
She's really
what
nervous.
What you're going to hear tonight is a detailed and dangerous plan called Project 2025 that the former president intends on implementing if he were elected again. I believe very strongly that the American people want a president who understands the importance of bringing us together, knowing we have so much more in common than what separates us. And I pledge to you to be a president for all Americans.
Trump got a
President Trump will give
haircut.
you a minute here to respond.
Number one, I have nothing to do, as you know, and as she knows better than anyone, I have nothing to do with Project 2025. That's out there. I haven't read it. I don't want to read it purposely. I'm not going to read it.
So glad
This
you
was a
addressed
group
that.
of people that got together. They came up with some ideas. I guess some good, some bad, but it makes no difference. I have nothing to do. Everybody knows I'm an open book. Everybody knows what I'm going to do. Cut taxes very substantially and create a great economy like I did before. We had the greatest economy. We got hit with a pandemic. And the pandemic was not since 1917, where 100 million people died, has there been anything like it. We did a phenomenal job with the pandemic. We handed them over a country where the economy and where the stock market was higher than it was before the pandemic came in. Nobody's ever seen anything like it. We made ventilators for the entire world. We got gowns, we got masks, we did things that nobody thought possible. And people give me credit for rebuilding the military. They give me credit for a lot of things, but not enough credit for the great job we did with the pandemic. But the only jobs they got were bounce back jobs. These were jobs bounce back, and it bounced back and it went to their benefit. But I was the one that created them. They know it, and so does everybody else.
Vice President Harris, I'll let you respond.
So Donald Trump has no plan for you. And when you look at his economic plan, it's all about tax breaks for the richest people. I am offering what I describe as an opportunity economy, and the best economists in our country, if not the world, have reviewed our relative plans for the future of America. What Goldman Sachs has said is that Donald Trump's plan would make the economy worse. Mine would strengthen the economy. What the Wharton School has said is Donald Trump's plan would actually explode the deficit. 16 Nobel laureates have described his economic plan as something that would increase inflation and by the middle of next year would invite a recession. You just have to look at where we are and where we stand on the issues. And I'd invite you to know that Donald Trump actually has no plan for you because he is more interested in defending himself than he is in looking out for you.
It's just a soundbite. They gave her that to say. Look, I went to the Wharton School of Finance.
They took his
and
mic off.
Many of those professors, the top professors, think my plan is a brilliant plan. It's a great plan. It's a plan that's going to bring up our worth, our value as a country. It's going to make people want to be able to go and work and create jobs and create a lot of good, solid money for our country. And just to finish off, she doesn't have a plan. She copied Biden's plan, and it's like 4 sentences, like run, spot, run. 4 sentences that are just, oh, we'll try and lower taxes. She doesn't have a plan. Take a look at her plan. She doesn't have a plan.
Mr. President, I do want to drill down on something you both brought up. The Vice President brought up your tariffs. You responded, and let's drill down on this because your plan is what she calls is essentially a national sales tax. Your proposal calls for tariffs, as you pointed out here, on foreign imports across the board. You recently said that you might double your plan, imposing tariffs up to 20% on goods coming into this country. As you know, many economists say that with tariffs at that level, costs are then passed on to the consumer. Vice President Harris has argued it'll mean higher prices on gas, food, clothing, medication, arguing it costs the typical family nearly $4,000 a year. Do you believe Americans can afford higher prices because of tariffs?
They're not going to have higher prices. What's going to have and who's going to have higher prices is China and all of the countries that have been ripping us off for years. I was the only president ever. China was paying us hundreds of billions of dollars, and so were other countries. And, you know, if she doesn't like them, they should have gone out and they should have immediately cut the tariffs. But those tariffs are there 3.5 years now under their administration. We are going to take in billions of dollars, hundreds of billions of dollars. I had no inflation, virtually no inflation. They had the highest inflation perhaps in the history of our country because I've never seen a worse period of time. People can't go out and buy cereal or bacon or eggs or anything else. The people of our country are absolutely dying with what they've done. They've destroyed the economy. And all you have to do is look at a poll. The polls say 80 and 85 and even 90% that the Trump economy was great, that their economy was terrible.
Vice President Harris, I do want to ask for your response, and you heard what the president said there, because the Biden administration did keep a number of the Trump tariffs in place. So how do you respond?
Well, let's be clear that the Trump administration resulted in a trade deficit, one of the highest we've ever seen in the history of America. He invited trade wars.
The
You
look
want
on
to
his-
talk about his deal with China? What he ended up doing is, under Donald Trump's presidency, he ended up selling American chips to China to help them improve and modernize their military, basically sold us out, when a policy about China should be in making sure the United States of America wins the competition for the 21st century, which means focusing on the details of what that requires, focusing on relationships with our allies, focusing on investing in American-based technology so that we win the race on AI, on quantum computing, focusing on what we need to do to support America's workforce so that we don't end up having, on the short end of the stick, in terms of workers' rights. But what Donald Trump did, let's talk about this, with COVID, is he actually thanked President Xi for what he did during COVID. Look at his tweet. Thank you, President Xi, exclamation point, when we know that Xi was responsible for lacking and not giving us transparency about the origins of COVID.
President Trump, I'll let you respond.
First of all, they bought their chips from Taiwan. We hardly make chips anymore because of philosophies like they have and policies like they have. I don't say her because she has no policy. Everything that she believed 3 years ago and 4 years ago is out the window. She's going to my philosophy now. In fact, I was going to send her a MAGA hat. She's gone to my philosophy. But if she ever got elected, she'd change it. And it will be the end of our country. She's a Marxist. Everybody knows she's a Marxist. Her father's a Marxist professor in economics, and he taught her well. But when you look at what she's done to our country, and when you look at these millions and millions of people that are pouring into our country monthly, where it's, I believe, 21 million people, not the 15 that people say, and I think it's a lot higher than the 21. That's bigger than New York State pouring in. And just look at what they're doing to our country. They're criminals. Many of these people coming in are criminals. And that's bad for our economy, too. You know, you mentioned before, we'll talk about immigration later. Well, bad immigration is the worst thing that can happen to our economy. They have, and she has, destroyed our country with policy that's insane. Almost policy that you'd say they have to hate our country.
President Trump, thank you. Lindsay?
I want to turn to the issue of abortion. President Trump, you've often touted that you were able to kill Roe v. Wade. Last year, you said that you were proud to be the most pro-life president in American history. Then last month, you said that your administration would be great for women and their reproductive rights. In your home state of Florida, you surprised many with regard to your 6-week abortion ban because you initially had said that it was too short. And you said, quote, I'm going to be voting that we need more than 6 weeks. But then the very next day, you reversed course and said you would vote to support the 6-week ban. Vice President Harris says that women shouldn't trust you on the issue of abortion because you've changed your position so many times. Therefore, why should they trust you?
Well, the reason I'm doing that vote is because the plan is, as you know, the vote is, they have abortion in the 9th month. They even have, and you can look at the governor of West Virginia, the previous governor of West Virginia, not the current governor, is doing an excellent job, but the governor before, he said the baby will be born and we will decide what to do with the baby. In other words, we'll execute the baby. And that's why I did that, because that predominates, because they're radical. The Democrats are radical in that. And her vice presidential pick, which I think was a horrible pick, by the way, for our country, because he is really out of it. But her vice presidential pick says abortion in the 9th month is absolutely fine. He also says execution after birth. It's execution, no longer abortion, because the baby is born, is okay. And that's not okay with me, hence the vote. But what I did is something for 52 years, they've been trying to get Roe v. Wade into the states. And through the genius and heart and strength of 6 Supreme Court justices, we were able to do that. Now, I believe in the exceptions for rape, incest, and life of the mother. I believe strongly in it. Ronald Reagan did also. 85% of Republicans do. Exceptions. Very important. But we were able to get it, and now states are voting on it. And for the first time, you're going to see, look, this is an issue that's torn our country apart for 52 years. Every legal scholar, every Democrat, every Republican, liberal, conservative, they all wanted this issue to be brought back to the states where the people could vote. And that's what happened. Now, Ohio, the vote was somewhat liberal. Kansas, the vote was somewhat liberal, much more liberal than people would have thought. But each individual state is voting. It's the vote of the people now. It's not tied up in the federal government. I did a great service in doing it. It took courage to do it. And the Supreme Court had great courage in doing it. And I give tremendous credit to those 6 justices.
There is no state in this country where it is legal to kill a baby after it's born. Madam Vice President, I want to get your response to President Trump.
Well, as I said, you're going to hear a bunch of lies, and that's not actually a surprising fact. Let's understand how we got here. Donald Trump hand-selected 3 members of the United States Supreme Court with the intention that they would undo the protections of Roe v. Wade. And they did exactly as he intended. And now in over 20 states, there are Trump abortion bans, which make it criminal for a doctor or nurse to provide health care. In one state, it provides prison for life. Trump abortion bans that make no exception even for rape and incest, which understand what that means. A survivor of a crime of violation to their body does not have the right to make a decision about what happens to their body next. That is immoral. And one does not have to abandon their faith.
She lost me.
Or deeply held beliefs to agree. The government, and Donald Trump certainly, should not be telling a woman what to do with her body. I have talked with women around our country. You want to talk about this is what people wanted? Pregnant women who want to carry a pregnancy to term, suffering from a miscarriage, being denied care in an emergency room because the healthcare providers are afraid they might go to jail, and she's bleeding out in a car in the parking lot. She didn't want that.
What are you talking
Her
about?
husband didn't want that. A 12 or 13-year-old survivor of incest being forced to carry a pregnancy to term.
Oh my God, how
They
do
don't
people live with
want
themselves?
that. And I pledge to you, when Congress passes a bill to put back in place the protections of Roe v. Wade, as President of the United States, I will proudly sign it into law. But understand, if Donald Trump were to be reelected, he will sign a national abortion ban. Understand, in his Project 2025, there would be a national abortion, a monitor that would be monitoring your pregnancies, your miscarriages. I think the American people believe that certain freedoms, in particular the freedom to make decisions about one's own body, should not be made by the government.
Thank you, Vice President Harris.
Well, there she goes again. It's a lie. I'm not
Oh,
signing a ban.
what was I saying?
And there's no reason to sign a ban because we've gotten what everybody wanted. Democrats, Republicans, and everybody else, and every legal scholar wanted it to be brought back into the states. And the states are voting. And it may take a little time, but for 52 years, this issue has torn our country apart. And they've wanted it back in the states. And I did something that nobody thought was possible. The states are now voting. What she says is an absolute lie. And as far as the abortion ban, no, I'm not in favor of abortion ban, but it doesn't matter because this issue has now been taken over by the states.
Would you veto a national abortion ban if it came
Well,
to
I
your
won't
desk?
have to because, again, 2 things. Number one, she said she'll go back to Congress. She'll never get the vote. It's impossible for her to get the vote, especially now with the 50-50 and essentially 50-50 in both Senate and the House. She's not going to get the vote. She can't get the vote. She won't even come close to it. So it's just talk. You know what it reminds me of when they said they're going to get student loans terminated, and it ended up being a total catastrophe. The student loans, and then I think probably her boss, if you call him a boss, he spends all his time on the beach. But look, her boss went out and said, we'll do it again. We'll do it a different way. And he went out, got rejected again by the Supreme Court. So all these students got taunted with this whole thing about this whole idea. And how unfair that would have been, part of the reason they lost, to the millions and millions of people that had to pay off their student loans. They didn't get it for free. But they were saying it's the same way that they talked about that they talk about abortion.
But if I could just get a yes or no, because your running mate, J.D. Vance, has said that you would veto it if it did come to your desk.
Well, I didn't discuss it with J.D. In all fairness, J.D., and I don't mind if he has a certain view, but I think he was speaking for me, but I really didn't. Look, we don't have to discuss it because she'd never be able to get it, just like she couldn't get student loans. They couldn't get student loans. They didn't even come close to getting student loans. They taunted young people and a lot of other people that had loans. They can never get this approved. So it doesn't matter what she says about going to Congress. Well, wonderful. Let's go to Congress, do it. But the fact is that for years, they wanted to get it out of Congress and out of the federal government. And we did something that everybody said couldn't be done. And now you have a vote of the people on abortion.
Vice President Harris, I want to give you your time to respond, but I do want to ask, would you support any restrictions on a woman's right to an abortion?
I absolutely support reinstating the protections of Roe v. Wade. And as you
Roe v. Wade was a
rightly
lie,
mentioned,
girlfriend.
nowhere in America
The woman admitted to
is
it.
a woman carrying a pregnancy to term and asking for an abortion. That is not happening. It's insulting to the women
Hospitals
of America.
have
And
been
understand
making
what has been
arrangements.
happening under Donald Trump's abortion bans. Couples who pray and dream of having a family are being denied IVF treatments. What is happening in our country? Working people, working women.
Who's been denied
who
IV?
are working
What is she
one or
talking?
two
That's not
jobs,
true.
who can barely afford childcare as it is, have to travel to another state to get on a plane sitting next to strangers to go and get the health care she needs. Barely
That's
can
not a
afford
need.
to do it, and what you are putting her through
It's not across the board a
is
need.
unconscionable. And the people of America have not, the majority of Americans believe in a woman's right to make decisions.
Don't talk
about her own
morality,
body.
girlfriend.
And that is why in every state where this issue has been on the ballot, in red and blue states both, the people of America have voted for freedom.
Vice President Harris,
Excuse me, I
thank
have
you.
to respond. Another lie. It's another lie.
Freedom to
I have
implode?
been a leader on IVF, which is fertilization.
Hello.
The IVF, I have been a leader. In fact, when they got a very negative decision on IVF from the Alabama courts, I saw the people of Alabama and the legislature 2 days later voted it in. I've been a leader on it. They know that, and everybody else knows it. I have been a leader on fertilization, IVF. And the other thing, you should ask, will she allow abortion in the 8th month, 9th month, 7th month?
Come on.
Dude, it's been
would
all
you
over
do
the
that?
news. Stop.
Why don't you ask her
Why-
that
why
question?
don't you answer
That's
the
problem.
question? Would you
because
veto?
under Roe v. Wade,
Answer the question, would you veto?
could do abortions in the 7th month, the 8th month, the 9th
That's
month,
not true.
and probably after birth. Just look at the former governor of Virginia. The governor of Virginia said, we put the baby aside and then we determine what we want to do with the baby.
That's literally hospital
We're gonna turn
protocols.
now to
They've been
immigration
doing
and
this. They've
border
been talking
security.
about
We
it.
know it's an issue that's important to Republicans, Democrats, voters across the board in this country. Vice President Harris, you were tasked by President Biden with getting to the root causes of migration from Central America. We know that illegal border crossings reached a record high in the Biden administration. This past June, President Biden imposed tough new asylum restrictions. We know the numbers since then have dropped significantly. But my question to you tonight is, why did the administration wait until 6 months before the election to act? And would you have done anything differently from President Biden on this?
So I'm the only person on this stage who has prosecuted transnational criminal organizations for the trafficking of guns, drugs, and human beings. And let me say that the United States Congress, including some of the most conservative members of the United States Senate, came up with a border security bill, which I supported. And that bill would have put 1,500 more border agents on the border to help those folks who are working there right now overtime, trying to do their job. It would have allowed us to stem the flow of fentanyl coming into the United States. I know there are so many families watching tonight who have been personally affected by the surge of fentanyl in our country. That bill would have put more resources to allow us to prosecute transnational criminal organizations for trafficking in guns, drugs, and human beings. But you know what happened to that bill? Donald Trump got on the phone, called up some folks in Congress, and said, kill the bill. And you know why? Because he'd prefer to run on a problem instead of fixing a problem. And understand, this comes at a time where the people of our country actually need a leader who engages in solutions, who actually addresses the problems at hand. But what we have in the former president is someone who would prefer to run on a problem instead of fixing a problem. And I'll tell you something, he's going to talk about immigration a lot tonight, even when it's not the subject that is being raised. And I'm going to actually do something really unusual, and I'm going to invite you to attend one of Donald Trump's rallies, because it's a really interesting thing to watch. You will see during the course of his rallies, he talks about fictional characters like Hannibal Lecter. He will talk about windmills cause cancer. And what you will also notice is that people start leaving his rallies early out of exhaustion and boredom. And I will tell you, the one thing you will not hear him talk about
Where's
is
that?
You will not hear him talk about your needs, your dreams, and your desires. And I'll tell you, I believe you
Where was
deserve
that?
a president who actually puts you first, and I pledge to you that I will.
Vice President Harris, thank you. President Trump, on that point, I want to get your response.
Well, I would like to respond.
Let me just ask, though, why did you try to kill that bill, and successfully so? That would have put thousands of additional agents and officers on the border.
First, let me respond as to the
Please.
rallies. She said people start leaving. People don't go to her rallies. There's no reason to go. And the people that do go, she's bussing them in and paying them to be there, and then showing them in a different light. So she can't talk about that. People don't leave my rallies. We have the biggest rallies, the most incredible rallies in the history of politics. That's because people want to take their country back. Our country is being lost. We're a failing nation. And it happened 3.5 years ago. And what's going on here, you're going to end up in World War III, just to go into another subject. What they have done to our country by allowing these millions and millions of people to come into our country, and look at what's happening to the towns all over the United States. And a lot of towns don't want to talk. It's not going to be Aurora or Springfield. A lot of towns don't want to talk about it because they're so embarrassed by it. In Springfield, they're eating the dogs, the people that came in. They're eating the cats.
Oh, don't laugh,
They're eating-
girlfriend. Oh, really?
They're
Really?
eating the pets.
Don't
of
piss
the
me off
people
now.
that live there. And this is what's happening
Jesus.
in our country. And it's a shame. As far as rallies are concerned, as far as the reason they go is they like what I say. They want to bring our country back. They want to make America great again. It's a very simple phrase, make America great again.
You're sick.
She's destroying this country. And if she becomes president, this country doesn't have a chance of success. Not only success, we'll end up being Venezuela on steroids.
I just want to clarify.
I
you
have to
bring up
agree with him.
Springfield, Ohio. And
I'm not taking
ABC News
sides,
did
but
reach out
for
to the city
real.
manager there. He told us there have been no credible reports of specific claims of pets being harmed, injured, or abused by individuals within the immigrant community.
Well,
All
I've
this-
seen people on television.
Let me just say here, this is the
The people on
this is a
television say
clar-
my dog was taken and used for food. So maybe he said that, and maybe that's a
What
good
do you
thing
not
to say
know?
for a
What do you
city
not
manager.
know?
I'm not taking this from
But the
television.
people
I'm
on
taking it
television
from
No
the
say
city
shame,
the
manager.
these
dog
people.
was eaten by
Disgusting.
the people that went there.
Again,
Coño.
the Springfield city manager says there's no evidence of that. Vice
We'll
President
find
Harris,
out.
I'll let you respond to the rest of what you've heard.
You talk about extreme.
I can't.
You know, this is, I think, one of the reasons why in this election, I actually have the endorsement of 200 Republicans who have formerly worked with President Bush, Mitt Romney, and John McCain, including the endorsement of former Vice President Dick Cheney and Congress member Liz Cheney. And if you want to really know the inside track on who the former president is, if he didn't make it clear already, just ask people who have worked with him. His former chief of staff, a four-star general, has said he has contempt for the Constitution of the United States. His former national security advisor has said he is dangerous and unfit. His former Secretary of Defense has said the nation, the republic, would never survive another Trump term. And when we listen to this kind of rhetoric, when the issues that affect the American people are not being addressed, I think the choice is clear in this election.
President Trump, I'll give you a quick minute to respond
Yeah.
here.
Thank you. Because when I hear that, see, I'm a different kind of a person. I fired most of those people. Not so graciously. They did bad things or a bad job. I fired them. They never fired one person. They didn't fire anybody having to do with Afghanistan and the
I want her to
Taliban and
answer
the
that.
13
I want her to
people
answer that.
Who's were just killed viciously
Come on,
and
girl.
violently killed. And I got to know the parents and the family. They didn't fire. They should have fired all those generals, all those top people, because that was one of the most incompetently handled situations anybody has ever seen. So when somebody does a bad job, I fire him. And you take a guy like Esper, he was no good, I fired him. So he writes a book. Another one writes a book, because with me, they can write books. With nobody else, can they? But They have done such a poor job,
Trump.
and they never fire anybody. Look at the economy. Look at the inflation. They didn't fire any of their economists. They have the same people. That's a good way not to have books written about you. But just to finish, I got more votes than any Republican in history by far. In fact, I
Ooh,
got
that
more
was a
votes than any sitting president in history by far.
Let me continue on immigration. It was what you wanted to talk about
This
earlier.
guy's
so let's get
seasoned. I
back to
mean,
your
whether you like him or not, he's
deportation,
seasoned.
proposal that the
He
vice
knows what he's
president has
doing.
reacted to as well. President Trump, you call
Like
this
him
the
or not.
largest domestic deportation operation in the history of our country. You say you would use the National Guard. You say if things get out of control, you'd have no problem using the U.S.
With local
military.
police, yes.
You also said you would use local police. How would you deport 11 million undocumented immigrants? I know you believe that number
I
is
was
much
looking.
higher.
I was waiting for this.
Take us through this. What
The
does this
immigration
look like?
thing.
Will authorities be going door to door in this country?
Yeah. It is much higher because of them. They allowed criminals, many millions of criminals. They allowed terrorists. They allowed common street criminals. They allowed people to come in, drug dealers, to come into our country. And they're now in the United States and told by their countries like Venezuela, don't ever come back or we're going to kill you. Do you know that crime in Venezuela and crime in countries all over the world is way down? You know why? Because they've taken their criminals off the street and they've given them to her to put into our country. And this will be one of the greatest mistakes in history for them to allow. And I think they probably did it because they think they're going to get votes, but it's not worth it because they're destroying the fabric of our country by what they've done. There's never been anything done like this at all. They've destroyed the fabric of our country. Millions of people let in, and all over the world, crime is down all over the world except here. Crime here is up and through the roof, despite their fraudulent statements that they made.
It's true.
Crime
What are you
in this
nodding?
country
You
is
can't nod
through
no,
the roof.
girlfriend.
And we have a new form of crime. It's called migrant crime, and it's happening at levels that nobody thought
Just tell the
possible.
truth.
President Trump, as you know, the
You can
FBI
read
says
this and tell the
overall
truth.
violent crime is actually coming down in this country. But Vice
Excuse me,
President
the
Harris, I'll
FBI
give you the-
they were defrauding statements. They didn't include the worst cities. They didn't include the cities with the worst crime. It was a fraud, just like their number of 818,000 jobs that they said they created turned out to be a fraud.
President Trump, thank you. I'll let you respond, Vice President Harris.
Well, I think this is so rich, coming from someone who has been prosecuted for
Coming from the prosecutor.
national security
She's
crimes,
smart. She should
economic crimes, election interference,
use your.
has been found liable for sexual assault, and his next big court appearance is in November at his own criminal sentencing. And let's be clear where each person stands on the issue of what is important about respect for the rule of law and respect for law enforcement. The former vice president called for defunding federal law enforcement, 45,000 agents, get this, on the day after he was arraigned on 34 felony counts.
Kamala,
So
you
let's
know
talk
all about that. You
what
did that in
is
California.
important in this race. It is important that we move forward, that we turn the page on this same old tired rhetoric and address the needs of the American people, address what we need to do about the housing shortage, which I have a plan for, address what we must do to support our small businesses, address bringing down the price of groceries. But frankly, the American people are exhausted with this same old
Honey, if
tired
you haven't
playbook.
done anything
Vice
yet,
President Harris,
what
thank
are you going to do?
Excuse me. Every one of those cases was started by them against their political opponent. And I'm winning most of them, and I will win the rest on appeal. And you saw that with the decision that came down just recently from the Supreme Court. I'm winning most of them. But those are cases, it's called weaponization. Never happened in this country. They weaponized the Justice Department. Every one of those cases was involved with the DOJ, from Atlanta and Fani Willis to the Attorney General of New York and the DA in New York. Every one of those cases. And then they say, oh, he's a criminal. They're the ones that made them go after me. By the way, Joe Biden was found essentially guilty on the documents case. And what happened in my documents case? They said, oh, that's the toughest of them all. A complete and total victory. 2 months ago, it was thrown out. It's weaponization, and they used it, and it's never happened in this country.
See,
they
her
used
nod
it
wasn't
to
strong.
try and win an election.
President
They're
Trump,
fake cases.
President Trump, thank you. A really
She's
quick
like,
response here, Vice
it's
President
like she's
Harris,
supposed
on
to
this
say
notion
no,
of
but
weaponization
you
of the
could
Justice
see
Department.
she's.
Well, let's talk about extreme and understand the context in which this election in 2024 is taking place. The United States Supreme Court
talk down to me,
recently
girlfriend.
ruled that the former president would essentially be immune from any misconduct if he were to enter the White House again. Understand, this is someone who has openly said he would terminate, I'm quoting, terminate the Constitution of the United States.
What are you
That he would
talking about? Oh my
weaponize
God, how
the
can these people do
Department
this?
of
How is this
Justice
legal?
against his political enemies. Someone who has
This is why people hate
openly
lawyers.
expressed
No offense to lawyers
disdain
out there.
for members of our military. Understand what it would mean if Donald Trump were back in the White House with no guardrails, because certainly we know now the court won't stop him. We know J.D. Vance is not going to stop him. It's up to the American people.
Vice
Yes,
President
that's right.
Harris, thank you.
That's right.
Vice
You
President
don't even
Harris,
know what's
in your
coming, both
last
of you.
run for president.
Weaponized, please.
We gotta
This is the
continue
one
here.
that weaponized, not me. She weaponized. I probably took a bullet to the head because of the things that they say about me. They talk
he's
about
careful.
democracy. I'm a threat to democracy. They're the threat to democracy
President
with a fake
Trump,
Russia investigation
We do have a lot
that
to get.
went nowhere.
We have a lot to get to. Lindsay?
Vice President Harris, in your last run for president, you said you wanted to ban fracking. Now you don't. You wanted mandatory government buyback programs for assault weapons. Now your campaign says you don't. You supported decriminalizing border crossings. Now you're taking a harder line. I know you say that your values have not changed. So then why have so many of your policy positions changed?
So my values have not changed, and I'm going to discuss at least every point that you've made. But in particular, let's talk about fracking because we're here in Pennsylvania. I made that very clear in 2020. I will not ban fracking. I have not banned fracking as Vice President of the United States. And in fact, I was the tie-breaking vote on the Inflation Reduction Act, which opened new leases for fracking. My position is that we have got to invest in diverse sources of energy so we reduce our reliance on foreign oil. We have had the largest increase in domestic oil production in history because of an approach that recognizes that we cannot over-rely on foreign oil. As it relates to my values, let me tell you, I grew up a middle-class kid raised by a hardworking mother who worked and saved
She's saying
and
things
was
that
able
Trump
to buy our
said.
first home when I was a teenager. The values I bring to the importance of home ownership, knowing not everybody got handed $400 million on a silver platter and then filed bankruptcy 6 times, is a value that I bring to my work to say we are going to work with the private sector and home builders to increase 3 million homes, increase by 3 million homes by the end of my first term. My work that is related to having a friend when I was in high school who was sexually assaulted by her stepfather. And my focus then on protecting women and children from violent crime is based on a value that is deeply grounded in the importance of standing up for those who are most vulnerable. My work that is about protecting Social Security and Medicare is based on long-standing work that I have done, protecting seniors from scams. My values have not changed. And what is important is that there is a president who actually brings values and a perspective that is about lifting people up and not beating people down and name calling. The true measure of the leader is the leader who actually understands the strength is not in beating people down, it's in lifting people up. I intend to be that president.
President Trump, your
Well,
response?
first of all, I wasn't given $400 million. I wish I was. My father was a Brooklyn builder, Brooklyn, Queens, and a great father, and I learned a lot from him. But I was given a fraction of that, a tiny fraction, and I built it into many, many billions of dollars, many, many billions. And when people see it, they are even surprised. So we don't have to talk about that. Fracking, she's been against it for 12 years. Defund the police, she's been against that forever. She gave all that stuff up very wrongly, very horribly, and everybody's laughing at it, okay? They're all laughing at it. She gave up at least 12 and probably 14 or 15 different policies. Like, she was big on defund the police. In Minnesota, she went out, wait a minute, I'm talking now, if you don't mind, please. Does that sound familiar?
Oh, look at that mouth.
She went out She went out.
Now she's
in
getting turned
Minnesota
on. Now she's getting
and
turned
wanted
on,
to let
guys.
criminals
Her
that
nervousness
killed
is going
people,
down.
that burned down Minneapolis. She went out and raised money to get them out of jail. She did things that nobody would ever think of. Now she wants to do transgender operations on illegal aliens that are in prison. This is a radical left liberal that would do this. She wants to confiscate your guns, and she will never allow fracking in Pennsylvania. If she won the election, fracking in Pennsylvania will end on day one. Just to finish, one thing so important in my opinion. So I got the oil business going like nobody has ever done before. When they took over, they got rid of it, started getting rid of it, and the prices were going up the roof. They immediately let these guys go to where they were. I would have been 5 times, 4 times, 5 times higher, because you're talking about 3.5 years ago. They got it up to where I was because they had no choice, because the prices of energy were quadrupling and doubling. You saw what happened to gasoline. So they said, let's go back to Trump. But if she won the election, the day after that election, they'll go back to destroying our country, and oil will be dead, fossil fuel will be dead. We'll go back to windmills, and we'll go back to solar, where they need a whole desert to get some energy to come out of it. You ever see a solar plant? By the way, I'm a big fan of solar, but they take 400, 500 acres of desert
President
soil.
Trump, we have a
These
lot
are
of
not good
issues
things
that we
for the
have to get
environment,
to.
as
We're
she
out of time.
understands.
Thank
All
you.
right, you made your
Lindsay,
point.
thank you. We
Okay.
have an election in just 56 days. And I want to talk about the peaceful transfer of power, which, of course, we all know is a cornerstone of our democracy, and the role of a president in a moment of crisis. Mr. President, on January 6th, you told your supporters to march to the Capitol. You said you would be right there with them. The country and the world saw what played out at the Capitol that day, the officers coming under attack. Aides in the West Wing say you watched it unfold on television off the Oval Office. You did send out tweets, but it was more than 2 hours before you sent out that video message telling your supporters to go home. Is there anything you regret about what you did on that day?
You just said a thing that isn't covered. Peacefully and patriotically, I said during my speech, not later on. Peacefully and patriotically.
He did say
and
that.
nobody on the other side was killed. Ashley Babbitt was shot by an out-of-control police officer that should have never, ever shot her. It's a disgrace. But we didn't do this group of people that have been treated so badly. I ask, what about all the people that are pouring into our country and killing people that she allowed to pour in? She was the border czar. Remember that. She was the border czar. She doesn't want to be called the border czar because she's embarrassed by the border. In fact, she said at the beginning, oh, I'm surprised you're not talking about the border yet. That's because she knows what a bad job they've done. What about those people?
Come on, Kamala! You can't be proud of it.
Countries all over the world, not just South America. They're coming in from
No humility.
over the world, David, all over the world, and crime rates are down all over the world because of it.
But let me just
one
ask
of
you.
those, David, one of those people are going to be prosecuted. One of the people that burned down Minneapolis is going to be prosecuted. Or in Seattle, they went into Seattle. They took over a big percentage of the city of Seattle. One of those people are going to be prosecuted.
But let me just ask
You might ask her that question.
You were the president. You were watching it unfold on television. It's a very simple
was
question
a nice
as we move
question.
forward toward another election. Is there anything you regret about what you did on that day? Yes or no?
I had nothing to do with that other than they asked me to make a speech. I showed up for a speech. I said, I think it's going to be big. I went to Nancy Pelosi and the mayor of Washington, D.C., and the mayor put it back in writing, as you know. I said, you know, this is going to be a very big rally or whatever you want to call it. And again, it wasn't done by me. It was done by others. I said, I'd like to give you 10,000 National Guard or soldiers. They rejected me. Nancy Pelosi rejected me. It was just 2 weeks ago. Her daughter
Pelosi
has a
admitted it.
tape of her saying she is fully responsible for what happened. They want to get rid of that tape. It would have never happened if Nancy Pelosi and the mayor of Washington did their jobs. I wasn't responsible for security. Nancy Pelosi was responsible. She didn't do her job.
The question was about you as president, not about former Speaker Pelosi. But I do want Vice President Harris to respond here.
I was at the Capitol on January 6th. I was the vice president-elect. I was also an acting senator. I was there. And on that day, the President of the United States incited a violent mob to attack our nation's capital, to desecrate our nation's capital. On that day, 140 law enforcement officers were injured. and some died. And understand, the former president has been indicted and impeached for exactly that reason. But this is not an isolated situation. Let's remember Charlottesville, where there was a mob of people carrying tiki torches, spewing anti-Semitic hate. And what did the president then at the time say? There were fine people on each side. Let's remember that when it came to the Proud Boys, a militia,
I feel like we're sitting at a kitchen table with a bunch of women.
the former president said, stand back and stand by. So for everyone watching who remembers what January 6th was,
It wasn't what
I
you
say,
said.
we don't have to go back.
Or MSM.
Let's not go back. We're not going back. It's time to turn the page. And if that was a bridge too far,
We're not going
for
back.
you,
We're
well,
not
there
staying
is a
here either,
place
girlfriend.
in our campaign for you to stand for country, to stand for our democracy, to stand for rule of law, and to end the chaos, and to end the approach that is about attacking the foundations of our democracy because you don't like the outcome. And be clear on that point. Donald Trump, the candidate, has said in this election there will be a bloodbath if this and the outcome of this election is not to his liking. Let's turn the page on this. Let's not go back. Let's chart a course for the future and not go backwards to the past.
Let me just follow up here.
It was a different term, and it was a term that related to energy because they have destroyed our energy business. That was where bloodbath was. Also, on Charlottesville, that story has been, as you would say, debunked. Laura Ingraham, Sean Hannity, Jesse, all of these people, they covered it. If they go an extra sentence, they will see it was perfect. It was debunked in almost every newspaper, but they still bring it up, just like they bring 2025 up. They bring all of this stuff up. I ask you this. You talk about the Capitol. Why are we allowing these millions of people to come through on the southern border? How come she's not doing anything? And I'll tell you what I would do, and I would be very proud to do it. I would say we would both leave this debate right now. I'd like to see her go down to Washington, D.C. during this debate because we're wasting a lot of time. Go down to, because she's been so bad, it's so ridiculous. Go down to Washington, D.C. and let her sign a bill to close up the border because they have the right to do it. They don't need bills. They have the right to do it. The President of the United States, you'll get him out of bed. You'll wake him up at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. You'll say, come on down to the office. Let's sign a bill. If he signs a bill that the border is closed, all he has to do is say it to the Border Patrol, who are phenomenal. If they do that, the border is closed.
Mr.
Those
President,
people are killing many people, unlike J6.
We talked immigration here tonight. I do want to focus on this next issue to both of you because it really brings us this into focus, truth in these times that we're living in. Mr. President, for 3.5 years after you lost the 2020 election, you repeatedly falsely claimed that you won, many times saying you won in a landslide. In the past couple of weeks leading up to this debate, you have said, quote, you lost by a whisker, that you, quote, didn't quite make it, that you came up a little bit short.
I said that?
Are you now acknowledging that you lost in 2020?
No, I don't acknowledge that at all.
But
I
you
said
did
that
say that.
sarcastically. You know that. It was said, oh, we lost by a whisker. That was said sarcastically. Look, there's so much proof. All you have to do is look at it. And they should have sent it back to the legislatures for approval. I got almost 75 million votes, the most votes any sitting president has ever gotten. I was told if I got 63, which was what I got in 2016, you can't be beaten. The election, people should never be thinking about an election as fraudulent. We need two things. We need walls, and we have to have it. We have to have borders, and we have to have good elections. Our elections are bad. And a lot of these illegal immigrants coming in, they're trying to get them to vote. They can't even speak English. They don't even know what country they're in practically. And these people are trying to get them to vote. And that's why they're allowing them to come into our country.
I did watch all of these pieces of video. I didn't detect the sarcasm, lost by a whisker. We didn't quite make it. And we should just point out here as clarification, and you know this, you and your allies, 60 cases in front of many judges, many of them Republican.
No judge looked at it.
And said
they
there was
said
no
we didn't have
widespread fraud.
standing. That's the other thing. They said we didn't have standing, a technicality. Can you imagine a system where a person in an election doesn't have standing? The President of the United States doesn't have standing. That's how we lost. If you look at the facts, and I'd love to have you'll do a special on it. I'll show you Georgia, and I'll show you Wisconsin, and I'll show you Pennsylvania, and I'll show you. We have so many facts and statistics, but you know what? That doesn't matter, because we have to solve the problem that we have right now. That's old news. And the problem that we have right now is we have a nation in decline, and they have put it into decline. We have a nation that is dying, David.
Mr. President, thank you. Vice President Harris, you heard the president there tonight. He said he didn't say that he lost by a whisker. So he still believes he did not lose the election that was won by President Biden and yourself. But I do want to ask you about something that's come up in the last couple of days. This was a post from President Trump about this upcoming election just weeks away. He said, when I win, those people who cheated, and then he lists donors, voters, election officials, he says will be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law, which will include long-term prison sentences. One of your campaign's top lawyers responded saying, we won't let Donald Trump intimidate us. We won't let him suppress the vote. Is that what you believe he's trying to do here?
Donald Trump was fired by 81 million people. So let's be clear about that. And clearly he is having a very difficult time processing that. But we cannot afford to have a president of the United States
This is
who
disgraceful.
attempts, as
Joke.
he did in the past, to upend the will of the voters in a free and fair election. And I'm going to tell you that I have traveled the world as Vice President of the United States, and world leaders are laughing at Donald Trump.
What are you
I
talking
have talked
about?
with military leaders, some of whom worked with you.
You don't even
and
talk
they
to
say
world
you're a
leaders.
disgrace. And when you then talk
Just tell
in
the
this
truth,
way
please.
in a presidential debate and deny what over and over again are court cases you have lost because you did in fact lose that election, it leads one to believe that perhaps we do not have in the candidate to my right the temperament or the ability to not be confused about fact. That's deeply
Honey, you don't even know the
troubling, and
meaning of
American
fact.
People deserve better.
I'm
Give
sorry.
you 1 minute to respond, Mr. President.
You
Let me
can't
just
say
say
lies
about
and say
world leaders.
facts.
Victor Orban, one of the
can't.
most respected men. They call him a strong man. He's a tough person, smart. Prime Minister of Hungary. They said, why is the whole world blowing up? 3 years ago, it wasn't. Why is it blowing up? He said, because you need Trump back as president. They were afraid of him. China was afraid, and I don't like to use the word afraid, but I'm just quoting him. China
think
was
she's
afraid of
jealous.
him. North Korea was afraid of him.
She's
Look
jealous.
at what's going on with North Korea, by the way. He said Russia was afraid of him. I ended the Nord Stream 2 pipeline, and Biden put it back on day one, but he ended the
That's
XL
a jealous
pipeline.
face.
The
Just saying.
XL pipeline in our country, he ended that. But he let the Russians build a pipeline going all over Europe and heading into Germany, the biggest pipeline in the world. Look, Viktor Orban said it. He said the most respected, most feared person is Donald Trump. We had no problems when Trump was president, but when this weak, pathetic man that you saw at a debate just a few months ago, that if he weren't in that debate, he'd be running instead of her. She got no votes. He got 14 million votes. What you did, you talk about a threat to democracy. He got 14 million votes, and they threw him out of office. And you know what? I'll give you a little secret. He hates her. He can't stand her. But he got 14 million votes. They threw him out. She got 0 votes. And
Little
when she
secret.
ran, she was the first one to leave because she failed. And now she's running. I don't understand it, but
Mr.
I'm
President,
okay with it
Mr.
because
President, your time is
I
up.
think we're
Thank
going to
you.
do very well.
We've got a lot more to get to.
Turning now
Yes.
to the Israel-Hamas.
I think the
war,
moderators
and
are doing a great
hostages
job, by
were
the way.
Still being held, Americans among them. Vice President Harris, in December,
I think they're
you
being
said,
professional
quote,
here
Israel
for
has
once.
a right to defend itself, but you added, quote, it matters how, saying international humanitarian law must be respected. Israel must do more to protect innocent civilians. You said that 9 months ago. Now an estimated 40,000 Palestinians are dead. Nearly 100 hostages remain. Just last week, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said there's not a deal in the making. President Biden has not been able to break through the stalemate. How would you do it?
Well, let's understand how we got here. On October 7, Hamas, a terrorist organization, slaughtered 1,200 Israelis, many of them young people who were simply attending a concert. Women were horribly raped. And so absolutely, I said then, I say now, Israel has a right to defend itself. We would. And how it does so matters. because it is also true, far too many innocent Palestinians have been killed. Children, mothers. What we know is that this war must end. It must end immediately, and the way it will end is we need a ceasefire deal and we need the hostages out. And so we will continue to work around the
I just heard her
clock
say
on
when.
that. Work around the clock, also understanding that we must chart a course for a two-state solution. And in that solution, there must be security for the Israeli people and Israel, and in equal measure for the Palestinians. But the one thing I will assure you always, I will always give Israel the ability to defend itself, in particular as it relates to Iran and any threat that Iran and its proxies pose to Israel. But we must have a two-state solution where we can rebuild Gaza, where the Palestinians have security, self-determination,
Like you rebuild
and the dignity they so
Iraq.
rightly deserve.
Not you, but just
President Trump, how would you negotiate with Netanyahu and also Hamas in order to get the hostages out and prevent the
I
killing
just ask that
of
you
more
stop
innocent
insulting the
civilians
American
in
people,
Gaza?
please.
If I were president, it would have never started. If I were president, Russia would have never, ever, I know Putin very well, he would have never, and there was no threat of it either, by the way, for 4 years, have gone into Ukraine and killed millions of people when you add it up, far worse than people understand what's going on over there. But when she mentions about Israel, all of a sudden, she hates Israel. She wouldn't even meet with Netanyahu when he went to Congress to make a very important speech. She refused to be there because she was at a sorority party of hers. She wanted to go to the sorority party. She hates Israel. If she's president, I believe that Israel will not exist within 2 years from now. And I've been pretty good at predictions, and I hope I'm wrong about that one. She hates Israel. At the same time, in her own way, she hates the Arab population because the whole place is going to get blown up. Arabs, Jewish people, Israel. Israel will be gone. It would have never happened. Iran was broke under Donald Trump. Now Iran has $300 billion because they took off all the sanctions that I had. Iran had no money for Hamas or Hezbollah or any of the 28 different spheres of terror. And they are spheres of terror, horrible terror. They had no money. It was a big story, and you know it. You covered it very well, actually. They had no money for terror. They were broke. Now they're a rich nation. And now what they're doing is they're spreading that money around. Look at what's happening with the Houthis and Yemen. Look at what's going on in the Middle East. This would have never happened. I will get that settled and fast, and I'll get the war with Ukraine and Russia ended. If I'm president-elect, I'll get it done before even becoming president.
Vice President Harris, he says you hate Israel.
That's absolutely not true. I have my entire career and life supported Israel and the Israeli people. He knows that. He's trying to, again, divide and distract from the reality, which is it is very well known that Donald Trump is weak and wrong on national security and foreign policy. It is well known that he admires dictators, wants to be a dictator on day one, according to himself.
Oh,
it is
the
well
labels.
known that he said of Putin that he can do whatever the hell he wants and go into
You got to
Ukraine.
go there, honey. You got
It
nothing.
is well known that
Man,
he
I
said
really wanted
when
to support
Russia
you. You're a
went
woman.
into Ukraine, it was brilliant. It is well known he exchanged love letters with Kim Jong-un, and it is absolutely
Her coach
well known
sucked.
that these dictators and autocrats are rooting for you to be president again because they're so clear they can manipulate you with flattery and favors. And that is why so many military leaders who you have worked with
I think he doesn't
have
give a
told
shit.
me you are a disgrace.
I think he's just showing up to show up.
That is why we understand that we have to have a president who is not consistently weak and wrong on
Vice
national
President
security,
Harris.
including the importance of upholding and respecting in highest regard
Wow.
our military.
Vice
We
President
are on
Harris,
different
thank you.
planets, people.
And she's the one that caused it. That's weak on national security by allowing every nation last month for the year, 168 different countries sending people into our country. Their crime rates are way down. Putin endorsed her last week, said, I hope she wins. And I think he meant it. because what he's gotten away with is absolutely incredible. It wouldn't have happened with me. The leaders of
That's a good
other
point.
countries
Good
think that they're
observation
weak
there, Trump.
and incompetent, and they are. They're grossly incompetent. And I just ask one question. Why does Biden go in and kill the Keystone Pipeline and approve the single biggest deal that Russia's ever made, Nord Stream 2, the biggest pipeline anywhere in the world going to Germany and all over Europe? Because they're weak and they're ineffective. And Biden, by the way,
President
gets paid
Trump,
a lot of money.
Thank you. We have a lot of issues to get to.
We'll be right back with much more of this historic ABC News presidential debate from the National Constitution Center right here in Philadelphia. Back in a moment.
Right here in Philadelphia, baby. I'm right around the corner from them. Right around the corner.
The ABC News presidential debate
I even
will
contemplated.
continue after this.
Okay, after this. All right, we'll be back, ladies and gentlemen. We'll put it over here. We'll put it over here like I was talking about earlier. There we go. I'm just going to mute it for now.
But look at all these.
Show me a sign if I miss it, if I'm chit-chatting with you guys before I get back. Stop! Okay, I know it seems like I'm taking sides. Very hard for me not to react. This is a live reaction after all. But I get it. Like, I don't want to miss what they're saying. But most importantly, it's about us being here together. And hey, whoever watches the replay, make sure to comment. Let me know. With love and humor. So, honestly, if you know me, you've been following me, if you subscribe, if you haven't subscribed, what are you waiting for? Smash that like button and subscribe, baby. You're the only one that's making this happen. Ain't nobody else. I'm definitely it ain't the boob tube. And if you didn't know, I'm live on Rumble, on X, aka Twitter, and right here on the boob tube. Thank you for joining me. I love you. You know you can feel it. You know when it's fucking real, when it's genuine. Okay, I'm sorry for that, Fonz, but it is late at night, okay? I don't usually go late. You know that. This is a very special broadcast, a special reaction right here from Philadelphia at the Olga S. Pérez show. So, I know. It seems like I'm taking sides, but I'm not. I'm just literally going with my instincts, to be honest with you. And then, watching body language. I just can't. And like I said from the beginning of the stream, I don't really watch these things. You know what? I'm going to take this off for a second. I don't want any of these commercials. I'm not promoting their commercials. I don't want to promote. They're not paying me. Oh, thank you for the super chats. Let me get into that. But yeah, so like I was saying, this is just about staying connected, sharing these. I think this specific debate is historical. It will be historical. You mark my words. And that's why I'm here. I know when to show up for shit that's like, oh, remember that? And everyone's like, no, I didn't remember you saying that. I didn't remember you. So here we are. Like we're all sitting here in my living room. I would love that. That's how I'm feeling. That's how I'm sharing this. Okay. Enough said. Let me check out the super chats. Thank you so much for the super chats. And thank you so much for your love. I love you too. Thank you. Especially when you support me, all of you. Become a member. It's a coffee a month tops. You can cancel anytime. Seriously. And you can really, that's where we really talk over on Locals. Perez Patriots at locals.com. And I'm looking for the other super chats. What was it? Let's focus on what is being debated and their strategies. I mean, we're only human. And yeah, I saw out of the corner of my eye, I was seeing some kind of salad talk. I think was AC Nelson talking about salad word salad, something like that. And you guys were going back. I saw some blue cheese and some Caesar dressing and croutons. And I hate to say it, you guys were taking me to, at least I'm thinking tossing salad. Just saying, that's what came through my mind. I'm being honest. You guys are talking about croutons and find the croutons. I don't know. Did I miss it? Is there something more to it that I'm missing? And the J word. See, I must have been emotional at the moment. I didn't catch that J word. Did they say J word, or you wanted to say the J word? And that's why you super chatted that. Yeah, total. JJ loves music. Totally. It's a joke. Right. Right. But I'm glad we're having this moment together. Okay. These are memories that we, the people, are creating. Period. End of story. I mean, as a woman, I didn't expect anything from her because I already told you guys, and I've even said in other people's live streams, she pretends that she's stupid. Look, she didn't sound stupid. Notice, even when she did the cackle, she was actually pretty mild about it. And she didn't sound that stupid. It just, I cannot believe that that's literally the job, apparently, of a politician, is just to lie. And I mean, I'd have to go back just to triple check that my ears heard right. You know what I mean? And make sure I don't take anything, misunderstand, right? Like pick up the whole thing. But I mean, I heard some libel, like defamation. Like, what the fuck? Where Trump, like I said, you don't have to like him. You don't have to agree with him. But he didn't give me that vibe that he had to lie. Like, did I miss, and please tell me if I missed anything he said that was a lie. If anything, I might have felt or heard an exaggeration, like, again, instead of, 1 million people. But no, honestly, there's been more than 1 million people that have crossed the border. But see, since MSM doesn't say that, then everybody's like, oh, no, it didn't happen because, Big Brother, CNN, NBC, MSNBC, ABC, CBS. Hey, and by the way, all you MSMers, okay? You should go ahead and pay me, all right? Give me a Venmo, donate to the channel because I just promoted you when I didn't want to, okay? Just saying. Oh, they're back. Hold on. Let me get the volume back on. Oh, shoot.
Want Ukraine to win this war.
I want the war to stop. I want to save lives.
Oh, fuck. What did I just do? Oh, my God.
Being killed by the millions. It's the millions. It's so much worse than the numbers that you're getting, which are fake numbers. Look, we're in for 250 billion or more because they don't ask Europe, which is a much bigger beneficiary to getting this thing done than we are. They're in for $150 billion less because Biden and you don't have the courage to ask Europe like I did with NATO. They paid billions and billions, hundreds of billions of dollars when I said, either you pay up or we're not going to protect you anymore. So that's maybe one of the reasons they don't like me as much as they like weak people. But you take a look at what's happening. We're in for 250 to 275 billion. They're into 100 to 150. They should be forced to equalize. With that being said, I want to get the war settled. I know Zelensky very well, and I know Putin very well. I have a good relationship, and they respect your president, okay? They respect me. They don't respect Biden. How would you respect him? Why? For what reason? He hasn't even made a phone call in 2 years to Putin, hasn't spoken to anybody. They don't even try and get it.
What was that? Guys, is this happening somewhere else?
Take this to Vice President Harris. I want to get your thoughts on support for Ukraine in this moment, but also as Commander-in-Chief, if elected, how would you deal with Vladimir Putin, and would it be any different from what we're seeing from President Biden?
Well, first of all, it's important to remind the former president you're not running against Joe Biden, you're running against me. I believe the reason that Donald Trump says that this war would be over within 24 hours is because he would just give it up. And that's not who we are as Americans. Let's understand what happened here. I actually met with Zelensky a few days before Russia invaded, tried through force to change territorial boundaries, to defy one of the most important international rules and norms, which is the importance of sovereignty and territorial integrity. And I met with President Zelensky. I shared with him American intelligence about how he could defend himself. Days later, I went to NATO's eastern flank, to Poland and Romania. And through the work that I and others did, we brought 50 countries together to support Ukraine in its righteous defense. And because of our support, because of the air defense, the ammunition, the artillery, the javelins, the Abrams tanks that we have provided, Ukraine stands as an independent and free country. If Donald Trump were president, Putin would be sitting in Kyiv right now. And understand what that would mean, because Putin's agenda is not just about Ukraine. Understand why the European allies and our NATO allies are so thankful that you are no longer president, and that we understand the importance of the greatest military alliance the world has ever known, which is NATO, and what we have done to preserve the ability of Zelensky and the Ukrainians to fight for their independence.
Delusional.
Otherwise, Putin would be sitting in Kyiv with his eyes on the rest of Europe, starting with Poland. And why don't you tell the 800,000 Polish Americans right here in Pennsylvania how quickly you would give up for the sake of favor and what you think is a friendship with what is known to be a dictator who would eat you for lunch.
Vice President Harris, thank you. We've heard from both of you on Ukraine tonight. Afghanistan came up in the last hour.
And he wouldn't
I wanted her
eat
to
you,
respond to something you
Kamala.
said earlier. And now, please, I'll give you a minute here.
Putin would be sitting in Moscow, and he wouldn't have lost 300,000 men and women, but he would have been sitting in Moscow. Quiet, please. He would have been sitting in Moscow, much happier than he is right now. But eventually, you know, he's got a thing that other people don't have. He's got nuclear weapons. They don't ever talk about that. He's got nuclear weapons. Nobody ever thinks about that. And eventually, maybe he'll use them, and maybe he hasn't been that threatening, but he does have that. Something we don't even like to talk about. Nobody likes to talk about it. But just so you understand, they sent her to negotiate peace before this war started. 3 days later, he went in and he started the war because everything they said was weak and stupid. They said the wrong things. That war should have never started. She was the emissary. They sent her in to negotiate with Zelensky and Putin, and she did. And the war started 3 days later. And that's the kind of talent we have with her. She's worse than Biden. In my opinion, I think he's the worst president in the history of our country. She goes down as the worst vice president in the history of our country. But let me tell you something. She is a horrible negotiator. They sent her in to negotiate. As soon as they left, Putin did the invasion.
President Trump, thank you. You did bring up something. You said she went to negotiate with Vladimir Putin. Vice President Harris, have you ever met Vladimir Putin? Can you clarify tonight?
Yet again, I said it at the beginning of this debate, you're going to hear a bunch of lies coming from this fellow.
Of course.
And that is another one.
Projecting.
When I went to meet with President Zelensky, I've now met with him
How
over
many
5
times did you already say that?
The reality is it has been about standing as America always should.
Low budget.
As a leader
blow.
upholding international rules and norms, as a leader who shows strength, understanding that the alliances we have around the world are dependent on our ability to look out for our friends and not favor our enemies because you adore strongmen instead of caring about democracy. And that is very much what is at stake here. The President of the United States is commander-in-chief, and the American people have a right to rely on a president who understands the significance of America's role and responsibility in terms of ensuring that there is stability and ensuring we stand up for our principles and not sell them for the benefit of personal flattery.
We've talked about Ukraine and Vladimir Putin. I do
Didn't I
want to
say
talk
she was
about
jealous?
Afghanistan. It came up in the first hour of this debate.
I'm just saying,
wanna
I
move on to
love that
Afghanistan.
I can see
Said
people.
Trump did the most
through
amazing
them.
thing I've ever seen. He got these countries, the 28 countries at the time, to pay up. He said, I've never seen. He's the head of NATO. He said, I've never seen. For years, we were paying almost all of NATO. We were being ripped off by European nations, both on trade and on NATO. I got them to pay up by saying one of the statements you made before, if you don't pay, we're not going to protect you.
President
Otherwise,
Trump.
we would have never gotten it. He said it was one of the most incredible jobs that he's ever seen done.
Thank you. I want to turn to Afghanistan. It came up in the first
Does anybody
hour
know
of the
that for a
debate,
fact? Just
and we
asking.
witnessed a poignant moment today on Capitol Hill, honoring the soldiers who died in the chaotic withdrawal from Afghanistan. I do want to ask the Vice President, do you believe you bear any responsibility in the way that withdrawal played out?
Well, I will tell you, I agreed with President Biden's decision to pull out of Afghanistan. 4 presidents said they would, and Joe Biden did. And as a result, America's taxpayers are not paying the $300 million a day we were paying for that endless war. And as of today, there is not one member of the United States military who is in active duty in a combat zone in any war zone around the world, the first time this century. But let's understand how we got to where we are. Donald Trump, when he was president, negotiated one of the weakest deals you can imagine. He calls himself a deal maker. Even his national security advisor said it was a weak, terrible deal. And here's how it went down. He bypassed the Afghan government. He negotiated directly with a terrorist organization called the Taliban. The negotiation involved the Taliban getting 5,000 Taliban terrorists released. And get this, and the president at the time invited the Taliban to Camp David, a place of storied significance for us as Americans, a place where we honor the importance of American diplomacy.
Girl,
where
you
we
ain't got
invite
nothing
and
American
receive
in you.
respected world leaders. And this former president, as president,
You should have stayed
invited
in your
them
lane, girl.
to Camp David because he does not again appreciate the role
D-Day-
and responsibility of the president of the
DA
United
strategy
States
would have worked
to
better for
be
you.
commander-in-chief with a level of respect. And this gets back to the point of how he has consistently disparaged and demeaned members of our military, fallen soldiers, and the work that we must do to uphold the strength and the respect.
Talk
of
all
the
you want,
United
but what have
States
you
of
done?
America
Can somebody
around
show
the
me an
world.
example?
Vice President Harris, thank you. President Trump,
About
your response
supporting
to
our
her saying that
military?
you began the
Yeah,
negotiations
thank
with
you.
the Taliban.
So, if
And you
take
never
a look
been
at
in the
that period
military?
of time, the Taliban was killing
Anybody in her family
our
even?
soldiers, a lot of them, with snipers. And I got involved with the Taliban because the Taliban was doing the killing. That's the fighting force within Afghanistan. They don't bother doing that because, they deal with the wrong people all the time. But I got involved. And Abdul is the head of the Taliban. He is still the head of the Taliban. And I told Abdul, don't do it anymore. You do it anymore, you're going to have problems. And he said, why do you send me a picture of my house? I said, you're going to have to figure that out, Abdul. And for 18 months, we had nobody killed. We did have an agreement negotiated by Mike Pompeo. It was a very good agreement. The reason it was good, we were getting out. We would have been out faster than them, but we wouldn't have lost the soldiers. We wouldn't have left many Americans behind, and we wouldn't have left $85 billion worth of brand new, beautiful military equipment behind. And just to finish, they blew it. The agreement said you have to do this, and they didn't do it. They didn't do it. The agreement was terminated by us because they didn't do what they were supposed to do.
I want to move on.
And these people did the worst withdrawal, and in my opinion, the most embarrassing moment in the history of our country. And by the way, that's why Russia attacked Ukraine, because they saw how incompetent she and her boss are.
President Trump, thank you. I want to move on now to race and politics in this country. Mr. President, you recently said of Vice President Harris,
Because race
quote,
is so
I didn't
important.
know she was black until a number of years ago when she happened to turn black, and now she wants to be known as black. I want to ask a bigger picture question here tonight. Why do you believe it's appropriate to weigh in on the racial identity of your opponent?
I don't, and I don't care. I don't care what she is. I don't care.
You asked the question, brother.
You make a big deal out of something. I couldn't care less. Whatever she wants to be is okay with me.
But those were your words, so I'm
I
asking.
don't know. I mean,
Yeah,
all I
why
can
would he
say is
care?
I read where she was not black, that she put out, and I'll say that. And then I read that she was black, and that's okay. Either one was okay with me. That's up to her. That's up to her.
She
President
definitely
Harris, your thoughts on this?
identifies
I think it's, I mean, honestly, I think
as
it's
her
a
Indian side. I'm telling you.
tragedy that we have someone who
That's
wants
how
to
she
be
carries
president
herself.
who has consistently, over the course of his career, attempted to use race to divide the American people. You know, I do believe that the vast majority of us know that we have so much more in common than what separates us, and we don't want this kind of approach that is just constantly trying to divide us, and especially by race. And let's remember how Donald Trump started. He was a
You called him a white
He
supremacist.
owned land, he owned buildings, and he was investigated because he refused to rent property to black families. Let's remember, this is the same individual
Is that his father?
who took out a full-page ad in the New York Times calling for the execution
Wasn't it Kushner?
of
Kushner's
5
father?
young Black and Latino boys who were innocent, the Central Park Five, took out a full-page ad calling for their execution. This is the same individual who spread birther lies about the first Black president of the United States. And I think the American people want better than that. Want better than
I
this.
gotta give him the fact that he's acting
Want
so
someone
chill
who understands,
for all
as
these
I
accusations.
do, I travel our country. We see in each other a friend. We see in each other a neighbor. We don't want a leader who is constantly trying to have Americans point their fingers at each other. I meet with people all the time who tell me, can we please just have discourse about how we're going to invest in the aspirations and the ambitions and the dreams of the American people? Knowing that regardless of people's color or the language their grandmother speaks, we all have the same dreams and aspirations and want a president
we don't.
who invests in
No,
those,
we don't. That's a
not
lie.
in hate and division.
Vice President Pérez, thank you. Lindsay?
President Trump, this is now your third time.
This is the most divisive presidency in the history of our country.
100%.
There's never been anything like it. They're destroying our country, and they come up with things like what she just said, going back many, many years, when a lot of people, including Mayor Bloomberg, agreed with me on the Central Park Five. They admitted, they said, they pled guilty. And I said, well, if they pled guilty, they badly hurt a person, killed a person ultimately. And if they pled guilty, then they pled, we're not guilty. But this is a person that has to stretch back years, 40, 50 years ago, because there's nothing now. I built one of the greatest economies in the history of the world, and I'm going to build it again. It's going to be bigger, better, and stronger. But they're destroying our economy. They have no idea what a good economy is. Their oil policies, every single policy. And remember this, she is Biden. You know, she's trying to get away from Biden. I don't know the gentleman, she says. She is Biden. The worst inflation we've ever had, a horrible economy because inflation
Trump, your
has
stimulus
made it
check.
so bad, and she can't get away
Add
with
it to that.
Time's up.
Just saying. You gotta be honest.
Briefly.
We gotta be honest.
Clearly,
That's
I
the
am not
problem
Joe
here.
Biden, and I am certainly not Donald Trump. And what I do offer is a new generation of leadership for our country. One who believes in what is possible, one who brings a sense of optimism about what we can do instead of always disparaging
You have no policies.
the American people. I believe in what we can do to strengthen our small businesses, which is why I have a plan.
No,
Let's talk
no.
about our plans. And
No, you cater to
and
mentally
let's
ill
compare
people.
The plans. I have a plan
Now,
to give startup businesses $50,000 tax deduction, to pursue their ambitions, their innovation,
If
their
you couldn't even
ideas,
do the
their
border,
hard work.
you can't
I
do
have a
squat,
plan,
girlfriend. No way.
$6,000 for young families for the first year of your child's life to help you in that most critical stage of your child's development. I have a plan.
yeah,
that is
you
about
got a plan.
Allowing people to be able to pursue what has been fleeting
Your plan
in terms
is
of the American
to
dream by offering a help with
have
down
us
payment
all
of
fight each other.
$25,000 down payment
That's your
assistance
plan.
for first-time home buyers. That's the kind of conversation, I believe, David, that people really
Yeah.
want.
You're always
tonight,
going to give.
as
We're going
opposed
to give
a
the American people
conversation
everything.
that is
We're going to
constantly
give
about
the government
belittling
our money.
and name-calling.
Fake money on top of it.
Turn the page
Vice President
and move
Harris,
forward.
thank
Fake
you.
money.
Let's
It's all
turn to
fake money
policy.
anyway.
Let's turn to
Okay.
Move on.
So,
President Trump-
delusional.
To policy, please.
These people don't know how to
defund the
stop.
police.
And I
She
mean,
has a
just
plan
politicians in
to
general.
confiscate everybody's gun.
President Trump,
She
what
has
is
I
your
wish
plan
Massey
to
was here
allow
sitting next to me.
Fracking in Pennsylvania or anywhere else.
Okay.
That's
Mr.
what her
President.
plan is until just recently.
I just need
Lindsay,
to
go ahead.
President
Trump,
has
You know,
no-
Rep.
President
Massey.
President has said
No, I'm
something
sorry.
twice.
The
I
only
need to
honest
respond.
one.
I'm sorry.
100%.
We're gonna move on.
Smart,
Vice
too.
President
To what he he has
President
said
Trump, this
multiple
is now
times.
your
Yes.
third time running for president. You have long vowed to repeal and replace the Affordable Care Act, also known as Obamacare. You have failed to accomplish that. You now say you're going to keep Obamacare, quote, unless we can do something much better. Correct. Last month, you said, quote, we're working on it. So tonight, 9 years after you first started running, do you have a plan, and can you tell us what it is?
Obamacare was lousy health care, always was. It's not very good today. And what I said, that if we come up with something, and we are
True.
working on things, we're going to do it and we're going to replace it. But remember this, I inherited Obamacare because Democrats wouldn't change it. They wouldn't vote for it. They were unanimous. They wouldn't vote to change it. If they would have done that, we would have had a much better plan than Obamacare. But the Democrats came up, they wouldn't vote for it. I had a choice to make when I was president. Do I save it and make it as good as it can be, never going to be great, or do I let it rot? And I felt I had an obligation, even though politically it would have been good to just let it rot and let it go away. I decided, and I told my people, the top people, and they're very good people. I have a lot of good people in that administration. We read about the bad ones. We had some real bad ones, too, and so do they. They have really bad ones. The difference is they don't get rid of them. But let me just explain. I had a choice to make. Do I save it and make it as good as it can be, or do I let it rot? And I saved it. I did the right thing. But it's still never going to be great, and it's too expensive for people. And what we will do is we're looking at different plans. If we can come up with a plan that's going to cost our people, our population, less money and be better health care than Obamacare, then I would absolutely do it. But until then, I'd run it as good as it can be run.
So just a yes or no, you still do not have a plan?
I have concepts of a plan. I'm not president right now. But if we come up with something, I would only change it if we come up with something that's better and less expensive. And there are concepts and options we have to do that. And you'll be hearing about it in the not too distant future.
Vice President Harris, in 2017, you supported Bernie Sanders' proposal to do away with private insurance and create a government-run healthcare system. 2 years later, you proposed a plan that included a private insurance option. What is your plan today?
Well, first of all, I absolutely support, and over the last 4 years as vice president, private healthcare options. But what we need to do is maintain and grow the Affordable Care Act. But I'll get to that, Lindsay. I just need to respond to a previous point that the former president has made. I've made very clear my position on fracking. And then this business about taking everyone's guns away.
Trump is not great at managing money
Tim
either,
Walz
by
and
the
I
way,
are
in my
both gun
opinion.
owners. We're not taking anybody's guns away. So stop with the continuous lying about this stuff. As it relates to the Affordable Care Act, understand, just look at the history to know where people stand. When Donald Trump was president, 60 times he tried to get rid of the Affordable Care Act. 60 times. I was a senator at the time when I will never forget the early morning hours when it was up for a vote in the United States Senate. And the late, great John McCain, who you have disparaged as being, you don't like him, you said, at the time because he got caught. He was an American hero. The late, great John McCain, I will never forget that night, walked onto the Senate floor and said, no, you don't. No, you don't. No, you don't get rid of the Affordable Care Act. You have no plan. And what the Affordable Care Act has done is eliminate the ability of insurance companies to deny people with pre-existing conditions. I don't have to tell the people watching tonight.
That stuff has been happening since I moved to the U.S. 30 years ago.
Remember when an insurance company could deny if a child had asthma?
Corporations.
If someone was a breast cancer survivor? If a grandparent had
Corrupt.
diabetes? And thankfully,
All
as
of
I've
them.
been vice president, and we, over the last 4 years, have strengthened the Affordable Care Act, we have allowed, for the first time, Medicare to negotiate drug prices on behalf of you, the American people. Donald Trump said he was going to allow Medicare
How's
to negotiate
she saying anything that she
drug
hasn't
prices.
done,
He never
please?
did. We did. And now we have capped the cost of insulin at $35 a month. Since I've been vice president, we have capped the cost of prescription
all
medication
bullshit.
for
This is all
seniors
theater,
at $2,000
as
a year.
usual.
And when I am president, we will do that for all people, understanding
I don't take it
that
serious
the
at all.
value I bring to this is that access to health care should be a right.
Hope you're enjoying the
and not just
entertainment.
a privilege of those who can afford it. And the plan has to be to strengthen the Affordable Care Act, not get rid of it,
Vice
pass as
President
prologue
Harris, thank
in terms
you.
of where Donald Trump stands on that.
I want to move to an issue that's important for
And what
all.
about,
Mistake.
guys, I've been saying
Number
some
one,
questions in the
John
super chat. I mean,
McCain
this.
fought Obamacare for 10
In
years.
the live chat.
But it wasn't only him. It was all of
How about
the
the fentanyl
Democrats
thing?
that kept it going. And you know what? We can do much better than Obamacare, much less money. But she won't improve private insurance for people, private medical insurance. That's another thing she doesn't want to get.
President
People
Trump-
are paying privately for insurance that have worked hard and made money, and they want to have private. She wants everybody to be on government insurance where you wait 6 months for an operation that you need immediately.
President Trump, thank you. We have another issue that we'd like to get to that's important for a number of Americans, in particular younger voters, and that's climate change. President Trump, with regard to the environment, you say that we have to have clean air and clean water. Vice President Harris, you call climate change an existential threat. The question to you both tonight is, what would you do to fight climate change? And Vice President Harris, we'll start with you. 1 minute for you each.
Well, the former president had said that climate change is a hoax. And
It is.
what we know is that it is very real. You ask anyone who lives
Only
in a
an
state who
ignorant
has
person could say that.
experienced these
Only
extreme weather
a
occurrences,
parrot.
who now is either being denied home insurance or it's being jacked up. You ask
You're not
anybody
educated.
who has been
What's your education?
the
Law.
victim
That's
of
it.
what that means in terms of losing their home, having nowhere to go. We know that we can actually deal with this issue. The young people of America care deeply about this issue. And I am proud that as vice president over the last 4 years, we have invested $1 trillion in a clean energy economy while we have
can't even
also
clean up
increased domestic gas
the ghetto.
production
You can't even
to
clean up the
historic
backyard.
levels. We have created over
Oy.
800,000 new manufacturing
I wouldn't
jobs.
even hire
While I
you to
have
take
been
my
vice
trash
president,
out.
we have invested in clean energy to the point that we are opening up factories around the world. Donald Trump said he was going to create manufacturing jobs. He lost manufacturing jobs. And I'm also proud to have the endorsement of the United Auto Workers and Sean
been losing
Fain,
manufacturing jobs
who
for
also
decades.
know that part of
Oh my
building a
God.
clean energy economy includes investing in American-made products, American automobiles. It includes growing what we can do around American manufacturing and opening up auto plants, not closing
He
them
already
like
said all that
happened under
stuff
Donald Trump.
Vice
5 years
President
ago,
Harris,
6 years,
thank
8
you.
It
years
didn't
ago.
happen under Donald Trump. Let me just tell you, they lost 10,000 manufacturing jobs this last month. It's going, they're all leaving. They're building big auto plants in Mexico, in many cases owned by China.
I did
They're
know about
building
that.
these massive plants, and they think they're going to sell their cars into the United States because of these people. What they have given to China is unbelievable. But we're not going to let that. We'll put tariffs on those cars so they can't come into our country, because they will kill the United Auto Workers and any auto worker, whether it's in Detroit or South Carolina or any other place. What they've done to business and manufacturing in this country is horrible. We have nothing because they refuse. You know, Biden doesn't go after people because supposedly China paid him millions of dollars. He's afraid to do it. Between him and his son, they get all this money from Ukraine. They get all this money from all of these different countries. And then you wonder, why is he so loyal to this one, that one, Ukraine, China? Why is he? Why did he get $3.5 million from the mayor of Moscow's wife? Why did she pay him $3.5 million? This is a crooked administration, and they're selling our country down the tubes.
President Trump, thank you.
Thank you.
We'll be right back with closing statements from both of our candidates. An historic night, this ABC News presidential debate from Philadelphia. Back in a moment.
The
Back in a
ABC
moment.
News presidential
Gonna
debate
mute it.
will continue.
Oh, yeah, we'll continue. All right. We're here for it because what else are we going to do? Don't worry. We're all going to have our hands in the dough real soon. I've been saying it. And this is, I don't do say stuff like, little beanie hat boy, where he's always like, do more. I don't even want to say it. Don't want to give him too much credit. Because I do know that what you say becomes. So we're not going to say that. It's not going to be that. No. But those who... I just saw a vision, guys. Check this out. And literally the division between the two sides, because everybody at the end is on one side or the other. There's no gray area. There's no more liberal, right? And it's just pro-America or not pro-America. Pro-America is freedom, period, end of story, in every level. And I'm just giving it to you in a nutshell. And then the other side is government, more control, more handouts, more responsibility, more draining, a burden, a parasite. I'm not trying to be mean. So when you have those two things, the people that seem that they're very united right now, the people that are making the most noise, the people that are breaking things, the people that are canceling people, the people that are whining and sensitive and censoring, right? Those people, when shit gets real, because it will, I mean, I'm telling you, today's the 10th. Watch on the 18th of September and moving forward. You mark my words. The FTC is going to be saying something. And you'll see. You'll see. We're going to be feeling like we're like not in the country we're in. It's going to feel like we're like in somewhere else in the world. Okay? So here's the good news. Here's the good news, because I always see the good in everything. Or I have the ability to see the positive and the possibilities, because I'm a winner, honey. I will not be defeated. And if I am, I'm doing it standing up, not laying down. And here's what I'm saying. That those that are making all the noise, that seem like they have so much pull, not seem, they clearly have been getting the attention and everybody's bending the knee over it and stuff like that. They can't handle it because they don't have real unity, guys. They know how to organize and they know how to, follow each other and have this facade that they're a group and they're united to a level that it is cult. It is, because it's mainly ideologies. It's not even facts. So that's their weakness. Because when facts hit you, so like when there's no more water, when there's a tsunami, an earthquake, the facts show you who you really are. And who are your friends, and who is really the group that you can lean on, because it ain't going to be the government. But that's delusional. See, that's the ideology, that their beliefs, that there's this little cushion and a safety net that literally is like the wolf, in sheep's clothing. Everybody knows that. The only way you don't know that, it has got nothing to do with age, culture, sex. It all has to do with knowledge, experience, and wisdom. But at the very first step is knowledge. Because when you know, you can't possibly be in those groups that think somebody else is going to take care of them. Because that's not reality. And that's why the government has gotten in so much debt. That's just to say one thing specifically. So what happens? When you live a lie, you make another lie and another lie and another lie. Well, what happens? The house of cards will implode. And it'll happen like that. It won't be, there's no threat no matter what they say. Are they back? Let me say.
This is ABC News Live.
The crush of families here in Poland.
At refugee centers.
They're not back yet.
Russia.
I saw that clip where he was like walking in the debate room. Yes. So see, I'm not afraid. I'm hopeful. I keep telling everybody, make sure you have water, generator, neighbors, friends, family. If you don't get along with your family, maybe this will be the one time that you'll get along. Because when people find out about the truth, they get real angry. See, right now they seem like they get really angry because they're like, like pro-Palestine and all these things, I believe in this. Abortion, whatever, no abortion, whatever. That's just like rooting for a team that really doesn't make or break you. You just watch it for entertainment. We're back, ladies and gentlemen.
Two very different visions for our country. One that is focused on the future, and the other that is focused on the past, and an attempt to take us backward. But we're not going back. And I do
Let me refresh. I don't know if it's them.
want separate
Oh, here we go.
own body and not have her government tell her what to do. I'll tell you, I started my career as a prosecutor. I was a DA, I was an attorney general, a United States senator, and now vice president. I've only had one client, the people. And I'll tell you, as a prosecutor, I never asked a victim or a witness, are you a Republican or a Democrat? The only thing I ever asked them, are you okay? And that's the kind of president we need right now.
Can somebody bring a
Someone
clip
who
up of
cares
that?
about you and is not putting themselves first. I intend to be a president for all Americans and focus on what we can do over the next 10 and 20 years to build back up our country by investing right now in you, the American people.
Vice President
Build back. You
Harris,
can't even
thank
take the
you.
trash
President
out.
Trump.
So she just started by saying she's going to do this, she's going to do that, she's going to do all these wonderful things.
She doesn't know how to do
Why
squat.
hasn't she done it? She's been there for 3.5 years. They've had 3.5 years to fix the border. They've had 3.5 years to create jobs and all the things we talked about. Why hasn't she done it? She should leave right now, go down to that beautiful White House, go to the Capitol, get everyone together and do the things you want to do, but you haven't done it and you won't do it because you believe in things that the American people don't believe in. You believe in things like we're not going to frack. We're not going to take fossil fuel. We're not going to do things that are going to make this country strong, whether you like it or not. Germany tried that, and within 1 year, they were back to building normal energy plants. We're not ready for it. We can't sacrifice our country.
That's
for the
knowledge
sake
for you
of
right
bad
there.
Vision. But I just ask one simple
That's not
question.
opinion. That's knowledge.
Why didn't she do it? We're a failing nation. We're a nation that's in serious decline. We're being laughed at all over the world.
True.
All over the world, they're laughed. I know
True.
the leaders very well. They're coming to see me. They call me. We're laughed at all over the world. They don't understand what happened to us as a nation. We're not a leader. We don't have any idea what's going on. We have wars going on in the Middle East. We have wars going on with Russia and Ukraine. We're going to end up in a third world war, and it'll be a war like no other because of nuclear weapons, the power of weaponry. I rebuilt our entire military. She gave a lot of it away to the Taliban. She gave it to Afghanistan. What these people have done to our country, and maybe toughest of all, is allowing millions of people to come into our country. Many of them are criminals, and they're destroying our country. The worst president, the worst vice president in the history of our country.
President Trump, thank you. And that is
I mean,
our
the
ABC
truth
News
is the truth,
presidential
ladies and
debate
gentlemen.
from
I'm
here
sorry.
in Philadelphia at the National Constitution
know?
Center. I'm Lindsay Davis.
And I'm
Okay,
David
we're
Muir.
not
Thank you
kids
for watching
anymore.
here
You
in
can't
the
just
US
like
and all
somebody
over the
because
world
of the
and from all of us
color.
here at ABC News. Good night.
Oh, we're done? I was getting a little hot
And
here.
we are here live on ABC with our post-debate comments. I'm Martha Raddatz. It was a lively debate from the
Do you want to see the post debates, guys? What do you want?
They had it all.
I'm
and
ready
it
to
was
go. I'm ready to come back tomorrow to do a part 2 and catch up with everybody. What do you think? That's what I'm hoping. I'm planning. Olga loved Trump. Now, listen. I'm the typical that when everyone likes someone and I see something, there's something wrong with them. I go, I don't care. I don't like that person. And I stand my ground. Like, Trump has flaws like everybody. Lies too. Yeah. Exaggerates. But I'm telling you, he is the only president that I felt, even when I watched videos, clips, articles, photos of all the presidents, not just America, all over the world. I love to study people. I mean, that's what I do. That's how I understand people. I connect with them. I don't listen to what people say. And I'll look at it and then I'll look into them and I'm like, oh, yeah. And that's how I've studied and to make sure to follow my instinct, to not let anybody cloud me. And I'm telling you, Trump, whether he was anointed, whether he was appointed, because you know me, I believe in fate. So whether you like the fate, that's That's just something like the sun coming out. You got to accept it. Okay? So, you know what? I don't want to hear their commentary. They're going to get on my freaking nerves. Ugh. They suck at it. It's not even whether I agree or not agree with them. So at the end of the day, you got to stop listening to people and just look at him. Really ask your intuition. You're going to see that there's no way you can hate him unless you hate yourself or you're jealous. Something about him that you don't have, even when you're like, I would never act like him. The guy has charisma. And I don't care if I agree with him, don't agree with him, if he makes mistakes. Of course I care that if he makes mistakes. Don't get me wrong. My point is, he does care whether he executes it right or not. And the assassination of character is a telltale example, a telltale sign that they know it too. Like the people that don't like him, or, you know, the so-called enemies, or whatever the fuck you want to call them. And that's where we're at. That we need to be looking at the heart and the soul of the person, because we're all fallible. But I think that's why he does have so many supporters. It's because you feel it. You feel it. It's not about being Republican. It's not about a party. It's not about a side. This guy transcends it all. For those who know me, who've been following me, when I've never cared for him, I never like watched The Apprentice. He was not even the type of person I would hang out with when I would go to Atlantic City and he would be there, or when I was in New York, you know. But I had no disdain. I just didn't care. It was like the typical, you know, just that typical guy from New York with money and stuff like that. And, you know, they could buy women, stuff like that. It wasn't not my style of men. You know, they think sometimes that they can really own you and they treat you in a certain way that I didn't like. I was more like, I wanted to be at the same level. I didn't like to be treated like something different, especially when I was younger. Because obviously when you're younger and you're looking all good and shit, then they're, you know. So I had to really be tough to get the respect, right? So that's 25 years ago. When he was running for office in 2016, I was in my own world. I was doing my coaching. I'm doing events. I'm inspiring people, motivating people, you know, helping people, creating community, uniting. That's been my passion because I know that's our strength. And then, you know, my friends would be asking me, hey, did you watch this? Did you see that? This debate, that, and Hillary, and who are you going to vote for, and all this stuff. And I'm like, guys, I'm not going to get into it right now. I've already mentioned in other live streams. I definitely talk about it on my locals. So if you really want to know, go check my locals page. The link is also in the description below. But the issue is that I couldn't stand his voice. Like when I would walk, say I'm in a hospital and I'm walking by and all these TVs are on, right? Or anywhere you go, could be even a train station, the TV's on, right? And I'm just like, oh God, this guy's voice is so annoying. So here's a person that's telling you how annoying his voice was to me. Period. It's like, that's just, the style, it was like, not me, dude. Like, oh. And it wasn't because MSN was talking bad about him. Just to hear him speak, I was just like, oh God. But I felt the same way. Well, not the exact same way, but about Bush, you know, or all the other ones where I was like, oh my God, you guys are pathetic. With him, it just really, I was just like, I already knew everything was a joke and everything was a charade and everything is theater. And then when Trump is running for office, I'm like, oh, great. Now we're really, but then I was thinking, but this is good. Let's go full throttle, full tar theater so that people can wake up, right? But it's okay. I'm still doing my thing and let everybody else get in the politics. But when 2020 hit and pandemic and my business was closed down and blah, 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 and I couldn't do nothing about it because one person can't. That's why I started this channel. That's why I started commenting separate from what I do. Because all of a sudden, it was the fact that MSM was talking so bad about Trump that I literally had to pay attention to see for myself. And I was surprised that when I just ignored how his voice annoyed me and to really tap in and use my own brain, my own heart, like everyone else should be doing. Really? Because there would be no disagreement. We can't talk about a movie that we both didn't watch. We can't talk about a book that we both didn't read. So how are we going to have a conversation when we're not even informed? And then we're being lied to? And then we're fighting over these people? No. No. But I can go to bed at night knowing that I can say, and I will stand to even with all the flaws this man has, he's the only one ever. Maybe JFK. Maybe. I have a lot of questions about, not questions, but I don't think he was very responsible, but I do think his heart was in the right place. Let's just put it that way. I think if he wasn't, he would still be here, or at least he would have reached old age. But that's another conversation, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to take notes. I'm going to write them down, and we're coming back tomorrow because this just got me going in a good way. And I hope it's done the same for you. I put a poll up of who's going to win. I didn't think they were going to start right on time, and I was going to start this live stream by telling you who I thought was going to win. And I figured if Kamala was if she was going to do well for herself, her best option would be to act like a lawyer. And in some parts she did. She used what she's good at, or I don't know if we can say she's good as, or she was really good as a DA, but anyway, that's her thing, right? That's what she spent most of her life doing. But then I saw, first of all, she was on some meds for sure. I mean, see what I'm saying? There's a lot I want to say, but I got to wrap it. I got to get up early in the morning. I got an appointment, got a meeting with a client early in the morning. I love you guys. Thank you so much for all your love and your super chats. Thank you for supporting me. Smash that like button, subscribe to my channel, follow me on X, follow me on Rumble, because you never know. I thought maybe we get cut off in the middle of the stream, and that's why I kept putting the whole Rumble thing, and I said it a couple times. Thank you so much. Let's get more of us together. Real people that really want the truth, not truthers. I don't need a label. Facts are facts. Truth is truth. I don't need to be no part of no group, okay? Because that's not helping anybody. Anyway, thank you so much for your support and love, and hear me out. Let's keep this conversation going. Until next time, hopefully very soon, like tomorrow. Stay tuned. Smash that notification bell so we don't miss each other. And thank you. Thank you so much. And I'll talk to you soon.